Can we do that at the beginning of every conference call, please?
I love it. I did it last night just to that specific one, but to make sure that it was a good one. And I was like, okay. So I saw we had some more people join. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Flora.
Yeah, that's what I said when we went into meditation. They're going to join and be like either weirded out or just jump on.
Hi, everyone. This is Flora.
Hi.
Hi. So I guess we kind of want to jump into a couple of questions that we have.
If you have your book, we have page numbers if you want to turn to it. But if you have the Kindle, the page numbers are off.
Very off.
But you don't have to have read the book to be able to follow along. So even if you haven't read the book, no pressure, stay on the call. Haven't read the book yet.
Yes, you're in for a treat.
For our first question, it was on page 148. And this was just something we were kind of brainstorming with, is how can we work with fosters on empathy?
I feel like that's something that could be a big struggle for a lot of you, is that a lot of the kids are angry, and how can we take it back and use the biohack on the kids?
Yeah, I mean, truly that process that worked for me is what it saved my life. I mean, before this experience I had at Landmark Forum is actually the name of the place. And Landmark Forum took me through a guided meditation where I forgave my mother and found very, very deep empathy for her and what she went through. And so I'll kind of give the context of it and walk through the exercise that I did, and then we'll kind of try to bring it down to like day to day and what you can do for your youth. So the idea is that, you know, my mother left me when I was 11 years old and took everything I owned, including my bike, which is what stung the most, honestly, in the moment. Took all my clothes, my toys, my everything. Changed her name, got married, and I've only seen her once since then. And so my whole life was all about invalidating my mother to validate myself. And so I was told by some family members that I would wear my foster care like a badge of honor. And I did. You know, I felt like you needed to understand what I had been through before you could really appreciate who I was in this world. And so I would tell the stories, I would, you know, dramify my life and make myself the victor and my mother, you know, this horrible person. And yet, while that motivated me to a large extent in my life, it also was very unfulfilling, right? I was a year-round scholar athlete. I put myself through college, working 2 to 3 jobs, paying $680 a month in tuition. But I did it for almost the wrong reasons, to try to prove to my mother that I could do it. Whereas really the quote unquote right reason is because it brings me joy, right? And so that was a shift that I had to make, but I couldn't make that shift until I forgave my mother. And I didn't even realize that, right? And so here I was at this Landmark Forum, and they said, okay, now what we're going to do is go through a process where you begin to forgive the person who hurt you the most. And so I knew my mother was the ringleader of all my problems. And so I was going to have to forgive my mother. And I was not prepared to do that in that moment. I did not think it was possible. Forever shall she be, you know, shamed for what she did to me, you know, and that I was the one who was going to be hurt in the situation. Never could she be hurt by this situation, because she'd had all the power in my mind. And so I went through this process. I went through a very deep visualization where they guide you through kind of what happened. And you get to this point where you're really experiencing, you know, you're living, breathing, eating, sleeping, feeling what you felt in that hardest moment of your life, which for me was when my mother tried to kill me with an ice pick handle and then left, right? And so here I am in this visualization, and I don't encourage you to take your youth through this part of it. This would be something the counselor would do, just to be clear. So here I am in this very, very dark place and reliving this very severe trauma. And then in this visualization, they said, now take this perspective of the person who's hurting you. What are they feeling in that moment? And it was a complete shift for me. I had never thought about that from my mother's perspective, and I had never thought it was hard for her in that moment, leaving me. In my story that I had told so many times, it was my mom had all the power and she left, and she must have been singing a lullaby as she jumped in the car and lived happily ever after. But then in this realization, I realized, you know, she must have felt small and powerless, and she was running, you know, from the cops and facing child abandonment charges, and I had turned in her drugs, and you know, whether or not she loved me or not, which was always what I hung my hat on, you know, that I don't feel like my mother loved me, whether she loved me or not, regardless, this was a hard experience for her, and she had to live very small for decades afterwards. And so that was huge, right? And I came out of that through empathy, realizing that it wasn't easy for my mom to do that. And through that, I forgave her. So that was a very big moment I was not expecting out of that workshop. And since then, I was able to, you know, accept Christ. You know, I was an aspiring Buddhist. I don't know if that resonates with anybody, but my father, who I later met and now have a very good relationship with, was an incredible man of God. And so I took great pride in telling this man who breaks bricks for Jesus that I was an aspiring Buddhist. But anyway, since then I was able to accept Christ and forgive my father right after that. And so it all, you know, moved in this conspiracy, if you will, synergy of coming together. And that's when I was able to start building my nonprofit, meet my husband, write my book, you know, travel to Rio de Janeiro. I mean, I didn't, all of the exciting things in my life happened after I forgave my mother. So I had no idea how much that was holding me back. To translate it to, please.
Do you think that these kids right now that are so angry, that this is something we can just, I mean, how do you think that I know they have to come about this on their own. You can't just be like, hey, do this, and then they feel it. But is there something that we can do better to kind of say, not put it in their face, but just here, you know, come to this experience on your own. But, you know, do we just
Morgan, you're kind of freezing it.
Oh, oops. Sorry, it's playing my internet. That's the gist of my question.
Yeah, so what I would say is that the context leading into the meditation, I thought, really set the stage, and that was this idea that you sell candy out the front and drugs out the back. Okay, and it sounds so random, but seriously, what I learned is we invalidate others to validate ourselves, right? We tell this story that, you know, this person did these horrible things to us, and maybe the facts show they did do horrible things. My mother should not have left me in the middle of the night, right? You know, she should not have attacked me with an ice pick handle. There are things she should not have done. Those are facts. But the way I told the story and the way I used that to push myself invalidated her to validate me, right? And so I think getting to that point is a counselor's job, perhaps. Mm-hmm. But the day-to-day of what you could do is just really challenge, you know, somebody to think about it, you know, from that person's perspective, you know, and saying, like, the facts are they shouldn't have done that. It's unacceptable what they did to you. It sounds like it really still hurts you. It sounds like you're really still hurting from that. And leading with empathy of your own, but then coming to them and asking them, you know, so what, just plain devil's advocate. I would just kind of throw it out there, like, I don't know, just a what if, you know, how do you think this hurt them in that moment? You know, do you think it was a thought-provoking question like that, I think, can be really helpful. Journaling has been tremendous through all of this. Writing dark poetry, journaling, art, meditating, sitting in nature, those things prompt your mind and get you ready to have that release, right? But just a thought-provoking question of, while it, you know, validate them and their story, because their ego is going to revoke the world if you challenge that part of their ego, right? So, you know, empathize. I understand this is hard, you know, and they should not have done those things, and you have every right to feel that way, but do you think it was easy for them? Right? And that was a turning point for me. I also, you know, if they ever get so lucky, you know, I had a cry session with my dad when the world faded away, and I didn't even realize my little sister was in the room, and my grandma, both of which he told me I could not see. And he didn't claim my little sister at first, this whole thing. I didn't know she didn't know. And he and I just got so deep in it. And I told him all the things and how he hurt me and didn't show up to my birthday party and everything else. And we sobbed and cried. And here's a 6'8" biker man, you know, probably 370. I mean, a huge man, sitting there crying and listening and saying, okay, and didn't yell at me, didn't scream, didn't defend himself. He just listened. And that was a big transformation too. So if they get that chance, I would encourage them to take it and stick to the facts. You know, that's another thing I think for us foster youth is we get the story going, right? And we told the story to the caseworkers, and we've told the story to our new foster parents. We've told the story to our CASA, and we told the story. By the time we tell the 10th, 100th, 1000th time we tell our story, it's dramified, right? All of the bells and whistles and the lights and the theatrics go with it. So just kind of bringing it back to the facts and encouraging somebody who might be ready to release and are looking for empathy in their life and are realizing maybe how it's hurting them and holding them back, is to stick to the facts and start really writing and journaling just the facts, and not how they feel when they felt, when they said, and what they could have, but like, what are the facts? And then how does this affect that other person? I think those would be some thought-provoking questions that can prompt somebody, and or tell them to ask their counselor to get them to that point and walk them through a guided meditation. You know, if they're really ready for a release, and they're maybe, you know, like with my dad, I had very unhealthy relationships with men. I had 3 restraining orders and an abusive ex-husband to boot, you know, and I didn't realize that I had daddy issues. If you would have asked me, I would tell you I didn't, you know, but I clearly had daddy issues. And as soon as I forgave my father, I already had met my husband through work, but it was 100% platonic. And now here I am, married to this kind, gentle, romantic, giving, generous, supportive man. I didn't even know they existed, you know?
We can jump on to the next. So the next one is not necessarily a question. It's starting at the very beginning of your book. You jumped right into it. Page 5, if you have your copy. Mm-hmm. It's just the daily practices of self-care. I feel like that's relevant to the volunteers themselves. Read those bullet points as a volunteer and practice all of those bullet points in your daily life. And then if you're practicing them, you can bring them to your CASA kids too. And if it works for you, it could work for them. But that's just something I found that I was just like, wow, this is anybody, you know, it doesn't just apply to the foster children. So I thought those were just great bullet points. And
yeah. Well, thank you for that. Yeah. So what I would do looking now, I just gave a presentation at the Rotary Club on Nothing's Important as Feeling Good right now. And what I'd love to get this presentation for y'all. It was really a breakthrough, actually. And the idea is that it's, if you are not feeling well chronically, right? Not you're having a bad day, you know, whatever, something happened, but I mean, you're chronically not feeling well, depressed or whatever it is. That's a biological problem that needs a biological solution. And so if you are, you know, kind of oscillating between hopeful, optimistic to overwhelmed, yes, these bullet points in this order is perfect. You know, harness gratitude and feel better immediately. Create a gratitude-based daily routine where you create lists or go on a walk and look at the birds and just be grateful to be alive. I always start with my shoes, right? And then calm yourself down through self-care, trust where you're right where you need to be, and bucket your time for higher productivity and satisfaction. However, if you are struggling to find basic levels of happiness and joy, you're feeling overwhelmed and anxious on a regular basis, it is a biological problem that needs a biological solution. And so I would prioritize calm yourself down through self-care. So I talk a lot about push-ups and walking and yoga. You could do wall sits, you know, whatever it is, breath work, meditation. Those are things that tap into the biology, but there's real brain science that shows what's happening to your brain when you're all stressed out, angry, upset, anxious, overwhelmed, whatever. So just know that, yes, gratitude is the solution, but it is not going to get you there if you are chronically depressed. You need to do something physical to break through that.
That's one thing when I was reading the book, I think it's later in the book, but it was like, don't encourage the CASA kids that have been through a trauma to do heavy cardio. I would never have thought of that. Like, encourage them to meditate and do yoga, not go for a run. I thought that was just like, I never knew that.
You gave me goosebumps, honestly. I'm so happy that resonated. But I was triggered by it, you know, and I didn't even realize I was triggered by it. I didn't understand what was happening, taking these, workout classes at the gym. But if you're afraid of being in your body, and all of a sudden you're completely overwhelmed in your body and out of control at the same time, it's a very scary thing. The other piece of that is if you are a product of trauma, or anxious or overwhelmed on a regular basis, just raising your arms up at the end of a heavy workout or moderate even, and then just, that gets your lymphatic system to release it. It starts releasing the endorphins, allows your heart rate to cool down. But it sounds so silly, if you're like, how can this just save my life? But if you don't allow yourself to calm down properly, whether you're product of abuse or not, if you experience high levels of stress, that simple process, inhale and then exhale, allows your system to recover, so that you don't go into that fight or flight state and freak out kind of in your body.
Yeah, that reminds me of another part where you said that, I think you said you were feeling anxious, I believe, and you talked to somebody and they said, well, have you been walking every morning? Because you had been previously walking. And for first thought, I thought, wow, that's so nice that somebody remembered, that, can y'all hear me? My thing says unstable now. That somebody remembered that, you had that daily activity that made you feel better. And then I was thinking for that, as our CASA volunteers, that would be something that they would notice, and they could be able to take point of. So I really thought that was something good for our volunteers to do.
Yeah, I think it broke up a little bit, but what you were talking about, I think, is where I was pacing the room and I was going back and forth and I was really overwhelmed. And to this day, actually, I still keep in contact with my counselor. Her name is Monique. And so I called Monique and I hadn't talked to her in like over a year. And I just checked in with her a couple of weeks ago, and once a month now we're going to check in, just as kind of like a tune-up or whatever. But I talked to her. I said, you don't even know how many times I asked myself, what would Monique say? And I know what Monique would say. Monique would say, have you been walking? That is the first question. And so anyway, so this last time I was telling her I'm doing really well at work and I've got my book out there and everything's going great. I was like, but I'm still feeling, moments of really being flooded and anxious at times. And she said to me, push-ups for certainty. So now she's championing the push-ups. But that is absolutely true. As a CASA, it's solution-based therapy. There's an actual modality called solution-based therapy that allows you to say, have you been through something like this in the past? And then the youth will say, well, yeah, I remember being really overwhelmed when I was kicked out of this home or whatever. And you say, okay. And then a little empathy. So it sounds like you've been able to do it. You've been able to get through something like this. You must be really strong, and then ask them a question. What did you do at that time when you were kicked out of that home or whatever, to get through that? And they'll say, oh, well, I did really dark poetry, or I joined a club, or I called a friend, or I, journaled, or, whatever it is, and then write that down. And so then have that moment where when you hear them struggling in the future, you say, have you been journaling? I remember you shared with me that really helped you in the past. Is that something you think would help? Just kind of put it out there, not you need to.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be beneficial if you journaled, and then keep coming back to that time and time again. And they'll get to the point where 10 years from now, they'll say, oh, I remember, I know what Cindy would say. Cindy would say, have I been journaling? I better start journaling. And they don't even have to call, and they see you and they're like, well, you've been helping me for years and you don't even know it.
Right. Speaking of contact information, page 19, and I know it's in the book like 20,000 times. Good job, Chris. But page 19, I think, is your first reference to your actual email. Mm-hmm. Volunteers, write it down. If you have a kid that you can't resonate with, maybe Crystal can.
Yeah.
And maybe
I think that's so awesome.
Maybe she can even bring it full circle and include you in it and say, like, be a mediator for a CASA volunteer and a kid. I hope you don't mind. You put it in your book, so I guess you don't mind me sharing it.
No, that's what I want. I really, I've lived for me long enough in my life. And then when I had that near-death experience, it woke me up, and as a foster youth, you have to take care of yourself and be one for all and all for one. But I realized my life I'm here for a reason, and I have to share my story and I need to give back. And that's why I'm alive right now, and I don't take that lightly. So I welcome the opportunity to help anybody I can.
And reading this book, I was thinking this really resonates with me, and I'm not a foster youth. I have had some traumatic experiences, and I can look at this book and reference back to it. And I love that. And I love that some of these, some of the gifts that y'all have been giving have been the books. And I just, that, I don't know why, but I love it so much to think that, we put together these resources, but it's just a list of resources. What you have here is literally a gold mine of something that is, first of all, can really connect with them, because I'm sure they can relate to you, but also something they can look back to. So I think that's awesome. So I would love to keep giving the book to the kids as they get older and kind of helping them as they age out. Is there a way that we can do more with the fosters as these kids are about to age out that you think of that? I mean, at this time we are giving them resources, and we do help them fill out paperwork and stuff like that. But I mean, I don't know how it feels, so I don't know if us telling them like, hey, here's these things, is that doing enough, or is there more we can do, especially helping the foster parents help them age out? Kind of just a question for everyone, if they're doing something special with their people, or what's going on that we can kind of get out there and have better resources for those who are aging out.
I feel like you can hand them everything, hand them a Bible, handbook, and how do you make them read it? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How do you get them encouraged to read it, or encouraged to apply for college that's free? Like, Crystal, what spoke to you? I mean,
for me, it was invalidating my mother. But seriously though, that I really welcome that conversation. I don't know if it's a today thing necessarily, but while we love, getting gifts for anybody of any age to let them know they matter, our passion truly is helping people aging out of the foster care system. We eventually want to transition the fostered to become a transitional housing program. God has really put that on my husband and my heart. And, because our funding fell through, we had to scale back, and now we're doing the gift program, which is great. But really, we want to help people transitioning out of the foster care program know that they matter, know they have the resources, have workshops, have the support. Because, I know the reality is this is in a book, and most people, whether they're in foster care or not, don't like to read. They want instant gratification. And then you layer in the fact that there's learning disorders are at a much higher rate within the foster care system. And then how do you translate this to somebody at their specific level on what they need needs to be customized, So I'm very interested to explore that. I'm creating content for each chapter. So I'm also presenting to another Rotary on the 3rd on to how to take care of yourself, which will be a fun one. So we'll have how to take care of yourself. Nothing matters as much as feeling good. Set yourself up for success. So I already have those ones done, but maybe even setting up a webinar program where once a month, we work with the local transitional housing programs here in Texas and get them to get their youth and your youth all on a webinar, like through Zoom. And I just do a webinar once a month on one of those topics of the book, one chapter at a time, and then turn that into an e-course, right? And then give free access to all foster youth. And even then, are they going to watch it? I don't know. Like, how do we get it in their hands? So, but I really want this to get as big as possible. I've been gifted to work at a phenomenal organization at the Victoria Advocate. I can flex my hours, to do what I need to do. I've been blessed through having great clients that make me very successful. So I have the bandwidth, and I'm hungry. This is my passion. This is my quest in life, is to get grit and gratitude as a blueprint, as a curriculum in as many people's hands as possible. And specifically the people who are struggling with trauma.
Well,
whether you're a foster youth or not. Yeah, whether you are a foster youth or not. By the way, has anybody on here done their ACE score?
No.
So that was a big breakthrough. When I read like 64% of the general population have at least a level 3 of the ACE score, that like blew me away. I thought this was a foster care phenomenon. But if we have time, maybe we could do that on the call, and I'll open up a link, and you could take down personally what your number is, and I can tell you the percentage.
That's a good idea. Let's do it. Does anybody have any more questions for Crystal? I'm going to open it up to y'all, see if y'all have any. If not, we can do that. We were also thinking about doing you're on your page 59 where you identify something that would get you super excited and write it down. But I think I will share that on our Facebook group, and we can do the ACE-4 if we want to do that. If nobody has any questions.
Just a comment. I like that transition thing. It seems like it's all happening today. I know it's something that we want to do is help kids transition into adulthood.
Mm-hmm.
But this morning, Brenham Casa is trying to build a focus program on children in transition to adulthood. And so I want to share your book, Crystal, with them. And they're looking for resources and looking for ideas. Maybe I'll, if you don't mind, may I share your contact information with them?
It's on page 19.
Yeah, exactly. Crystal at gritgratitudebook.com will get you right to, and that's not grit and gratitude, Grit Gratitude Book.
Grit Gratitude. I know I went to Grit and Gratitude and I think it was like car mechanics or something. I don't know. It was the and when I was doing some Google searching on it.
Right. I do want to encourage all of the volunteers to do the little activity on page 59. Cindy, you're going back to school, right? I feel like you already did this activity like a while ago in your head without even knowing it.
I have to admit I haven't finished the book. I got it on my Kindle and started reading it and said, oh no, I need a paper copy. I sent it back while I still could, and my paper copy hadn't come in, but I have to have it. I have to have that book in my hand.
Me
So
too.
I can't wait. It gets here Friday. I can't wait so I can finish it. But
when you get your paper copy, it's on page 59, and it's 4 bullet points about visualizing your goals. And you can even relate that to your CASA kids by helping them visualize their goals and approach them. I just thought that was really great.
And it's real brain science here. You know, I just want to point this out because so many people think that visualization is either A, unimportant, or B, woo-woo, you know, into some magic. But there's a real brain science. It's called the reticular activating system. And so what happens is you're bombarded with, 3 million stimuli every single second. You feel this cord ever so gently hit your side. You feel your hair on your neck. You feel your shirt, your clothes. You feel that your legs pressing on the seat. You feel the air on your face. You feel all these things. So you have 3 million stimuli coming at you. And this goes back to caveman and cavewoman days. You had to protect yourself and know what stimuli to pay attention to. So it's called your RAS. I mean, Google it, RAS, right? RAS, reticular activating system. And it keeps you alive. And this was a big breakthrough I had in my research. Your brain is not designed to help keep you successful. It's not. To me, I always wanted my brain to make me successful. I want to be destined for greatness is what I used to say as a child, right? No, your brain is designed to keep you alive. That is a big breakthrough when you think about it. And so what happens through visualization is your brain doesn't know the difference between visualizing while you experience something vividly or actually experiencing it. And so what happens is if you do it again and again, and you really get into like the smells and the sights and the feels, you just kind of like I call it a creative workshop, have this creative workshop where you're make believe again, your future goal and your ideal life. You trick your brain into changing the blueprint of who you are. And then it pays attention to all these little things in your life. And it makes you through your RAS pay attention and grab that little piece of information that would have slipped past you. Right? So visualization is a tremendous tool to really train your brain into becoming who you want to be.
If you guys look in the comments, Crystal posted the link if you want to go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, let's do this because I'll read it out loud. If you want to, if you're auditory, then just listen and I'll read it and you can write down a number, okay? You just have to say yes or no. There's 10 questions. It's super easy. At the end, if you said yes, then you're going to add that as a number 1, or 1 point. And so if you said yes to 7 out of 10 questions, you have a 7. If you said to 3 out of 10, then you have a 3, okay? So I see Miss Amanda Wendell, thank you so much for joining us. It's such a pleasure to see you. Every time I see your face, it just brightens my day. She is such a light in this world. Okay, so here we go, 1 through 10. 1, did a parent or other adult in your household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might be physically hurt? Yes or no? Just go ahead and write it down. Did a parent, question 2, did a parent or another adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Just a yes or no. Question 3. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you ever touch or fondle you, or have you touch their body in a sexual way, or attempt or actually have oral, anal, or vaginal intercourse with you? Yes or no? You think it's hard to take the test? Try reading it.
Yeah.
Number 4, did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to each other, or support each other? Yes or no? Question 5. Did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, and had no one to protect you, or your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you, to take care of you or take you to the doctor if you needed it? Yes or no? Here's an easy one. Were your parents ever separated or divorced? Number 6. Seven. Was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Or sometimes often or very often kicked, bitten, hit with a fist, or hit with something hard, or ever repeatedly hit at least a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Yes or no? 8. Did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic, or who used street drugs? Yes or no? 9. Was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? Yes or no? And lucky number 10, did a household member go to prison? Yes or no? Go ahead and tally up your scores. And would you be surprised to learn that in a study of 17,000 people, at least 87% of those had more than one of the general population? We're not talking about foster youth. 87% had at least more than one. So when you think about how that affects the general population who have long-term parents, support networks, hopes and dreams and goals. Maybe they went to the same school their whole year, have a best friend since childhood, have good nutrition. Parents read to them at night. it's still going to affect their long-term ability to perform. But what the study with the ACEs, and I found so breakthrough, this is by Nadine Burke, our Surgeon General. Nadine Burke showed that there's a connection not just between mental health or success level or even educational outcomes in this data, but between that and actual physical problems in their body. Like
Wow.
lung cancer, right? I mean, who would have thought lung cancer or, heart disease had something to do with whether or not you were a product of domestic abuse, or liver disease, or a greater degree of smoking, right? Obviously, I'll share my screen here if it'll allow me. Let me see here. There's, some really hard things you don't want to say out loud. You don't want to really know, but whether or not it's looking at the number, of ACE scores, right? They just go up to 4. And the percentage of becoming an alcoholic, chronically depressed, being addicted to antidepressants, perpetrating domestic violence, liver disease. This was, we kind of understand like there's a cycle of poverty, but when you look at the fact that you're more likely to get jaundice because somebody beat you, like that was groundbreaking to see, sure, maybe smoking, maybe being a product of being, violated, suicide attempts, okay, maybe, but you start looking at how this impairs work performance, informs teen sexual behaviors. This is like groundbreaking. And so this Nadine Burke's research actually was the first to really show your resiliency, and really how this ties to your actual physical health. So I just was blown away that 87% of people are having more than one. This is not a problem within foster care, but it is multiplied by the fact when you move through multiple placements, where you lose family, where, in my case, my mother lied to my grandmother and said that I threw her down a flight of stairs, which wasn't true, so I lost that whole side of the family. Now, good riddance, okay? It was all a blessing, right? But in the moment that was traumatic, right? Yeah, you look at how this is compiled with the fact you go to different schools. I went to 23 different schools and learned math every way you can imagine. So, but how my confidence level, luckily I just am a go-getter, but how somebody's confidence affected when you don't know that way to learn math. Every way, other way, but they want you to use cubes and lines and blocks compared to numbers and memorization. So now you're not scoring well, even though you get the right answer, you can't use cubes and blocks. I've had this happen, right? So now your confidence is affected, or you layer on top of that peer pressure and social media and teen bullying and feeling isolated and teens from foster care are more likely to be sexually trafficked. It's horrible to say out loud. Nobody wants to say these things, but the reality is that our population are special. They're special because they've been through the amount of trauma that affects their body and causes them to be more likely to have physical problems in their body, and it causes them more likely to have outward problems in terms of social, peer, educational, and financial performance, right? So they're more likely to need social services, which puts them back into that cycle of poverty. And all of this can, really be stopped by talk therapy, by a long-term role model, by a daily practice of gratitude, by, doing physical exercise, right? So there are things you can do. Now, I know Miss Amanda asked, where can we get those statistics? That link is from ACE. It's too high, but there's a TED Talk on it. That's where I got introduced to Nadine Burke, Burke. Beautiful woman, and she's done tremendous research, but just Google Nadine Burke and you'll see a ton of research on ACE scores. It's really redefining how we interact with foster youth and trauma-informed care specifically, because it's not about just, oh, well, they're just, sexually active. We don't really want to talk about it. No, if they have a high ACE score, they're more likely to be violated. They're more likely to be more promiscuous. They're more likely to be in an abusive relationship and be perpetrating, domestic violence, right? So it's not just something like, oh, okay, we don't really want to talk about that. It's real. Things are happening in their brain. And if you look at the brain science between what lights up in the brain of somebody who's been through trauma and hasn't been through trauma, they're literally, the whole prefrontal cortex is the front of the brain that makes us human. And you hear a lot about how boys develop later than girls, right? As teens are more likely to speed, for example, and do risky behavior because they're not thinking about their future. They don't have that part that makes us human and think long term. If you look at somebody who's been violated in trauma, and by definition, being in foster care, you've been through trauma, they actually show that it does not light up the front of their brain. Their prefrontal cortex is completely underdeveloped because they've been through trauma. So it's not even a hypothesis. There's real brain science that shows a part of your brain is firing differently when you've been through trauma. And so that's really what my book is about, is it's how do you break through that? If it's biological and these are real problems, it's not I'm not going to puff you up and make you feel good. I'm actually going to bring you down a little bit and let you realize there's some real biological problems you got to fight uphill. But my counselor told me that I need to fight for my life like my life depends on it. I need to act like I'm training for the Olympics, and anything less than that, I will die. She said that to me with a straight face. And that woke me up. It's not about, do I feel like doing these things? My life is on the line for this. I'm given a chance to live here, and I will die early if I do not do these things. And that is what gets me up every single day. And so how do we tell that to somebody who doesn't care and has an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex? I don't know, but I'm on a mission to figure it out and make it fun at the same time, but really let them know the statistics and what they're up against.
Well, thank you so much, Crystal. But I do still want to give everybody a chance for questions. And don't feel intimidated if you haven't read the book. Ask her questions. She loves answering. And if you don't want to ask now, you can email her, I guess.
Flora has one.
Okay. Was it Flora?
I don't know if I missed this from before or not, but I wanted to ask, did you ever find your CASA from when you were young?
You know what? I check almost daily, but I'm going to check right now on my LinkedIn. So was it you, Regina?
It was actually Christy, one of our supervisors, and she was muted or something. So I'm the one who told you, but
yeah,
she was like, I think I found her.
Yeah, let me see. I responded and I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember me. It's your foster youth. So let's see. I don't see. I don't think she's responded. I'm looking. I'm going to look again. Cindy Trubowicz, where are you? Yeah, I don't see her. She hasn't responded yet.
I have a question about that. We, through our CASA, I know that we have access to people search, like to get phone numbers and addresses. At least we use that when we're trying to find families for the kids that are in foster care. I wonder, Regina, could we use that people search to help her to actually maybe get different contact information for her?
Diana has access to that. I can ask. But I think it's just white pages. But I think Texas CASA pays for us to have like a little more in depth.
Yeah.
So you have to sign up or something.
I've used it. Yeah, it does cost. It does cost, and because I've used it. I've come to the office and used it before.
Yeah. I know in office Diana has that, and she's out today. But I'll ask. Trubowicz.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, Trubowicz. Just like it sounds, yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I had learned, I mean, I hated that I got in on so late, but I was actually on my therapy appointment from 1 to 2. But one of the things that I have learned is that every organ in our body has a different vibration. And when that vibration gets off, that's when disease comes. And so like if you have anger, if you have, you know, if you worry all the time, all that different stuff changes the vibration of different organs in the body. And so that's where, like, where the heart disease can come, or liver cancer, or, you know, different stuff like that. So it very much ties into what I did catch you talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that again goes back to, you know, a lot of people think this stuff is woo-woo.
It's not.
I heard a tremendous sermon from the pulpit on the quantum physics, and I was so blown away. I was like, people are not talking about this enough. There is not a division between church and science. Like the two, I mean, there's real biology behind what all of this is doing to your body. And so there's like, if you Google it, there's like water and sand studies that show, for example, if you bless water and you say nice things to it, for example, and you freeze it and you look at it under a microscope, it freezes in like really cool geometric shapes. Same thing with like sand on a platter. If you move it to different shapes, or excuse me, different frequency, it creates different shapes on this as it shakes. It's incredible stuff. We'll have to create a Facebook page and share it around. It is not woo-woo. Everything has a frequency. And just like taste is a frequency, sound is a frequency, sight, light, it's all sinal waves and frequency. And so what happens is our body is made up of a frequency as well. And when we get out of frequency, this when dis-ease comes into your life in different forms. So yeah, we have to do things that raise our frequency, and the highest frequency is the form of love and appreciation and gratitude. That's what we're cultivating here, you know. And that's the idea, is that if you create daily routines where you're cultivating, maybe you're the typical person, if you will, who's struggling between frustration and overwhelmment and optimism and hope. You know, you're kind of in that realm. You can kind of bump up a little easy and use these gratitude practices to be successful. But if you're in like depression and despair and like there's no hope to be seen, you have to do something physical to break out of that and raise your frequency through exercise, whether or not it's push-ups or a brisk walk. And then work your way up to that optimism, to overwhelmment, and then really kick in gratitude. So I just offer that it's biological, but you need a biological solution to a biological problem. And for me, my story was how I stayed off of antidepressants. You know, I don't judge somebody who did have them. But that's when she told me I needed to fight for my life, as she prescribed antidepressants, and I told her I didn't want to take it. And I got this far in my life and I had not been on antidepressants and I didn't want to. And so she told me, well, you need to fight for your life, and like you're training for the Olympics or you will die. And I said, okay, I will do it. Right. But again, you need a biological solution to a biological problem. And that biological solution may be antidepressants, you know, but it also may be push-ups in my case, push-ups for certainty.
Yeah, you can definitely rewire your brain and using gratitude and just capturing your thoughts if they're in a negative state and changing how you think about a situation. And over time, your brain will rewire itself.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Rebecca, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say I can relate to the taking antidepressants. I just started a new one today. It's kind of trial and error to see what works. But that was, in fact, the only question I answered yes to on the ACE test was the one about, did you have a family member that was depressed? And I think my mom was. My sisters and I, you know, all take antidepressants, but they do help. But I think you're right, too, that just if you can make yourself get out and walk or just do some kind of exercise, it helps tremendously. Yeah. And also, I just wanted to say you're just such a dynamic speaker. I just so enjoyed listening to you, and you were the one that just hearing you made me want to read your book. And I do hope that more kids in foster care can hear you, like through the Zoom or webinars, because I think that would encourage them to read the book.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I am like actively looking for ways. If you know of any speaking opportunities, I know Tim mentioned possibly getting me connected with that group. They're looking for a transition focus group. The foster youth who's just kind of struggling, you know. you can let them know that I'm going to listen and be empathetic, but I'm also going to help them and ask them what they can do, you know, to set up a plan, you know, to help them on a daily basis. Because one thing is for sure, you know, was it death and taxes, right? But the other thing is that you can look around at the 5 people you spend the most time with and the books you've read, and that's who you're going to become, you know, and that's really, for a lot of people, not good news, right? So what are the daily habits you have in place? Who are you spending your time with? What are you consuming? And that is the direction of your life. And so a lot of these people have big goals. A lot of these foster youth do. And so my question is, what's important to you? If you want to go to the moon or become a cosmetologist or start a landscaping business, I don't know, right? I support it. That's great. Awesome. Let's do it. Now, what are you going to do to get there? You know, what is your daily practice in place to get there? And you know, maybe it's visualization, maybe it's sitting in nature. I started a garden. I've never felt so loved. I hung my art on the wall, and every time I look at it, I'm just like, I'm an artist. You know, I see my book, I'm like, I got this in the world, you know? So it's like, whatever it is, and it gives you that sense of significance and cultivates gratitude, do it, you know? So that's my approach with these young people, and I welcome any opportunities to reach as many as possible. Yes, please, Cindy.
Good question. Can you hear me? Yeah. Do you do any work or workshops with the CPS workers, the kind of the frontline workers? Because they can almost make or break it with the child of the way they react to them and all that, and they turn them off. And then sometimes the foster kids kind of see us as an extension of CPS, and then don't want our advice because they feel like we're part of the problem they're feeling. But I think CPS workers are overwhelmed. They see it so much, they probably have to become a little hardened. But sometimes I just think, you know, they need a refresher. I was just wondering if you have been asked or work with them at all.
I haven't been asked. I welcome it. You guys, this is a big deal. Yesterday, we passed our home visit for becoming foster parents. So
that's awesome.
We are so excited. We're within 2 to 3 weeks of our first placement. She's going to be a teenage girl, and I don't know who she is, but she's alive.
She's going to be the luckiest girl
I know, Crystal, that's awesome.
I'm so excited. So through that process, we got certified through Upbring. And Upbring, I gave my worker who helped me, Miss Leslie, shout out to Leslie. I gave her a little book. And so she was like, oh, we'd love, you know, maybe we could do a training with some of our staff, you know. So whether it's Upbring or, thank you, Miss Amanda, whether it's Upbring or CPS or any of that, you know, I welcome the opportunity, because training the trainers is one of the best ways to get this customized to the youth. And making it as easy for them to understand, because there is real science behind it, but it's not hard science where you need to study and understand the science to get the results. You can do what we just did, a 5 to 6 minute meditation, by listening to it on YouTube and have somebody guide you and feel the benefits. You don't have to understand how that relaxes your amygdala and engages your prefrontal cortex and refires your neurons, you know? So, but yes, I welcome that opportunity to work with CPS and Upbring, transitional housing providers, whatever it is, to get this to them.
You're getting a foster youth. That also means you're getting a new CASA.
I know, I hope. I should have a CASA. I know not all of them do, but I hope so.
Well, that's awesome.
I just had a kind of a personal question, Crystal, and
Yes,
maybe you said this or maybe it's in your book, but I was just wondering how you came from California to land in Victoria, Texas. We're so lucky to have you.
Yeah, no, I'm blessed to be here. You couldn't make me go back to California. Let me count the reasons. I'm originally from Oregon, and so that's where I was. In a nutshell, I was born in Portland, and then my house burned down when I was 3, and I moved to Humboldt County, California, which is where I went to grade school, and that's where my mother left in the middle of the night, and I was turned over to Humboldt County. In their foster care system. They then found my father, and so they moved me to Oregon to reunify with my father, who had not started recovering yet. Now he has been clean for 20 something years, but at the time he had not started recovering, so that did not work out well. But I moved in with my sister's aunt at that time, and then I went to college in a very warm place which is San Francisco. And there is a joke in there. If you have ever been to San Francisco, it's not warm. So anyway, so I spent all my college years and started my career out in Silicon Valley, San Francisco, where I met my husband. And then he started his business in San Diego. So we moved to San Diego for a few years, and he is originally from here. So if y'all know of Grover's Bend over behind the pump house, that is on his mother's side. They're part of the Grover's Bend descendants. And so,
interesting.
yeah, so he was born here and he went to Woodsboro High School. So he is a local, and I can do no wrong with my mother-in-law. I brought her baby boy. So I'm good in that.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thrilled to be here. This is truly where we're meant to be, and for so many reasons. And, one of which is we have a beautiful 3-bedroom, 2-bath house and can get our beautiful foster youth. In California, you just can't get the space. You can't afford it. So we feel very, very fortunate, and his parents spoil us. So I finally that's the good news, y'all. Not only do I have a great relationship with my father, but I got the mama of the year. His mama is so awesome. She's the one who gives me all my painting supplies, and I paint. She proofs my book, and she's the most, her and my dad too on his side. I mean, but they're so thoughtful and supportive, and just spoil us and dote us and cook for us and just love on us. So we're not going anywhere.
I think they're making sure you don't go anywhere.
Yeah, we're happy to be in Victoria. Very, very happy.
Good.
We're glad to have you. Does anybody else have any questions, or are we ready to wrap up? Oh, good. Well, Crystal, thank you so much. Literally, it's just such a pleasure every time you come on. We appreciate it so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank
Well,
you.
we will see y'all all next time. And if y'all have any questions or anything, just let us know, and we can get you in contact, or if we can get you any more resources that you need, just let us know.
One thing real quick before y'all leave. Crystal, we would like you to join. I know you might not want to, and that's okay. But we have a closed Facebook group that's just for volunteers. It's kind of just reminders of events. It's nothing like crazy exciting yet, but we're hoping to build it to become a place where there's open forum and questions that people can comment on and ask, but it's members only. But I'll send you a link, or you can look it up, and I'll shoot you an email about that.
Yeah, send me the link. I'd love to join. And I am on the verge of creating a ton of content around grit and gratitude. So we can even do some Q&A, like, we could do a Tuesday live or something where everybody can pop on and ask questions, or, maybe
future goals. Love it.
Yeah, keep the youth anonymous, but say, hey, I got a 16-year-old who, is really struggling with this. What would you recommend? I don't have all the answers, but hey, I'll brainstorm it with you and tell you what worked for me.
Perfect.
Right.
And maybe we'll have an LPC beside me. By the way, do y'all know John Lennon, I want to say this. He read my book. He's here in Victoria. He's an LPC specializing in guided meditation. Get his name. John Lennon, Lenihan. He's an LPCS specializing in foster care and specifically guided meditation. We've had a lot of exchanges, but he says he's here in Victoria. So maybe he and I could do a live where he's like the actual, brain, if you will. And I bring the experiences and we, brainstorm it out. But I told him as we exchanged emails is that I hope one day we can do a live or create some content around this.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be a good idea. He critiques my book, which is interesting.
Oh.
And his main critique is that I did not use the word guided meditation enough. So I was like, I'll take that criticism. So yes, but thank you. And I look forward for the link to join that and really be a resource to your group.
Regina Morgan, Amanda in the chat asking about when is next time.
So in the future, when I guess out of the world of COVID, I know the world of COVID is not ending, but when people feel comfortable getting back in groups, small groups, we wanted to actually invite Crystal to do a book signing locally. if she's game for that. Pressure's on. I asked you in a group.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I've been planning for my book signing with y'all, so it's okay. You're in my visualization.
Perfect. But
So it'll
as
just
to
have to
answering that, I have no idea.
Yeah.
But that is our future
Yeah.
goal, and we're not going to forget it. I'm going to leave this on my desk, unless somebody wants to read it, and then it goes away for a little bit, but it comes back.
Good.
But we're not.
Also, I just want to put a plug out there. I have been doing a lot of art. So I want to see if we can do like an artwork book signing thing. And then any of the artwork that's purchased would go directly donated to the fostered, which comes back to CASA Gifts.
That would be
So,
wow.
I was
Love it.
hoping to do something like that and do something really affordable for like, I have a coasters I'm making that are really cool. And so we could do some like $20, $15 little purchases. It doesn't have to be like big over the moon prices. And then have a couple like, $75 or, $40 even, and then something. So just kind of plugging that out there that I've been planning for our art show and book signing that
Love it.
we haven't actually talked
Great.
about.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
Well, we look forward to it. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you so much, Crystal. We will see you again soon, hopefully, everybody. Bye.
Ciao.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.